Roger L. Munroe served in the United States Navy from 1942 to 1944. He was born on July 3, 1925, in Kennebunkport, Maine, to Charles Ernest Munroe and Lillian Butlin. He grew up in Kennebunkport and left high school in 1942 to enlist in the United States Navy at Casco Bay, Portland, Maine, on August 29th. He was assigned for a short period of time to a few small ships out of Casco Bay before being sent to the USS Denbola, which was a combat storage ship. This ship provided supplies including frozen, chilled, and dried provisions and propulsion and aviation fuel to U.S. Navy combatant ships that were at sea for extended periods of time. He also served aboard the USS Hamuel, which tended destroyers and other ships in Casco Bay, and that was until April of 1943, and then sailed to Bermuda to serve as the flagship of the Destroyer Escort Shakedown Task Force Group. His last and most important assignment was in charge of provisions as a storekeeper third class aboard the heavy cruiser USS Quincy. The Quincy was instrumental in the Battle of Normandy, doing battle off the Omaha and Utah beachfronts. It fought for 4 straight weeks off the coast of France without a single casualty. Quincy was assigned on March 27, 1944 to Task Force 22 and trained in Casco Bay, Maine. She then steamed to Belfast, Northern Ireland, arriving on May 14th. The ship reported to the commander of the 12th Fleet for duty, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, who was accompanied by Rear Admiral Alan G. Kirk, and they inspected the ship and the company the next day on May 15th. The Quincy left Belfast on May 20th for River Clyde and anchored off of Greenock, Scotland, to begin special training for shore bombardment. She then left Belfast and began preparations for the invasion of Europe. The D-Day invasion aboard the Quincy was well recorded by war correspondent Richard Strout, who was embedded on the heavy cruiser. He detailed the entire battle round by round and hour by hour. In an excerpt from his account of the battle aboard the Quincy, he begins 0450, and you gentlemen probably understand that 0450 is 4:50 in the morning, a.m. And he says, "We are 3 miles off the coast and no comment from the enemy. More fireworks go off on the beach. The acrid smell of soil and powder is in the air. I have never imagined it could be like this. The most horrible thing was 2 falling planes, ours I suppose, that crashed down with great bubbling bursts of oily flames when they hit. All 9 of our big guns are pointed at the beach. It is getting lighter. There are yellow streaks in the cloud bank. 0530. It has come. Bang! We are fired upon. 3 shells strike the water a short distance from the bow, sending sprays of water over it. Then one fell after the fantail for about 100 yards. The ship shook and then settled down, and we opened up. Our second salvo hit the target. It is knocked out. Good firing. This is the bombardment. My ears ache. Each time our big guns go off, the ship jolts. We all have cotton in our ears, but nevertheless it is noisy, and we feel hot blasts on our face in spite of the flash-proof mask that we are wearing." He ends his remarks, 2400, midnight. We are, I think, winning the battle. And here is the place to stop, because I have seen the most glorious sight of my life. The paratroopers have arrived on the scene. Right out of the east suddenly came a great and greater roaring of sound, as if all the planes in the world were droning overhead, and as far as the eye could see, a steady line of C-47 transports filled with crack troops. All the ship's entire crew were exhausted, as they had been on their battle stations for 48 continuous hours without let-up, and the strain has been great. But all are in the spirit of camaraderie, and that is the feeling that goes to the making of the great ship. The Quincy is the first ship taken under fire and the first to engage the enemy batteries. She was stationed off the right flank of Utah Beach at 0537 hours on the morning of June 6, 1944. As part of Task Force 125, she engaged shore batteries, and a U.S. Navy spotter squadron flying submarine Spitfires and Seafire 3s were one of the units which provided targeting coordinates for fire control. Roger witnessed firsthand the landing of the troops and saw men drown due to the weight of their own heavy equipment. That sight has remained with him for years. During the period of June 6th through the 17th, in conjunction with the shore fire control parties and aircraft spotters, the Quincy conducted heavily accurate pinpoint firing against enemy mobile batteries and concentrations of tanks, trucks, and troops. She also neutralized and destroyed heavy long-range enemy batteries, supported minesweeper operations under enemy fire, and engaged the enemy batteries that were firing on the crews of the USS Corey, the USS Glennon, and the USS Rich during their efforts to abandon their ships after they had struck mines. The ship also participated in the reduction of the town of Quinville on June 12, 1944. The Quincy then steamed to the Isle of Portland, England on June 21st and joined Task Force 129. She departed for Cherbourg, France. The bombardment of the batteries surrounding the city commenced in conjunction with the Army's assault at 12:07 hours on June 24th. 19 of the 21 primary targets assigned to the task force were successfully neutralized or destroyed, thus enabling Army troops to occupy the city that day. The heavy cruiser sailed for Palermo, Sicily, which it was then based at through July. Here it conducted shore bombardment practices, and on the afternoon of August 13th, the company, with 4 British cruisers, 1 French cruiser, and 4 American destroyers, the Quincy departed from Malta for the landings on August 15th and the southern coast of France. For 3 days, the group provided fire support on the left flank of the U.S. Third Army. The Quincy began between August 19th and August 24th. The ship engaged the heavy batteries at Toulon, well, my French is bad, Saint-Marie and Cape Ceci. She steamed westward the afternoon of August 24th to support minesweeping clearing in the channel of Port de Beaune in the Marseilles area. The Quincy was detached from the European duty on September 1st, 1944, and steamed for Boston, arriving 1 week later. She remained in Boston for refit and the installation of new equipment for a presidential cruise through October 31st. During the entire time at sea, Roger was always, and he repeats, always seasick. Many times while in Maine and before shipping to the war front, he was so ill that he was placed on shore duty. It was at this time in Boston, while the ship was undergoing refitting, that Roger, tired of being seasick, ended his tour of duty. He was discharged on October 31st, 1944, and he received his last monthly paycheck of $78 with an allowance of 5 cents per mile for his trip back to Kennebunkport. He ended his military career proud of his service and proud of being part of the Normandy invasion. After his discharge, he worked at Firestone in Boston for a while, and then he returned to Kennebunkport, where he met his wife, Barbara, a student at the Weber School of Nursing, on a blind date in Biddeford. They married in 1945, and he owned a filling station in Kennebunk before he traveled by train to a meat cutting school in Toledo, Ohio. Roger and Barbara moved to Newmarket in the early 1950s and raised a family of 5 children. Roger was a meat cutter at the old LaBranche's IGA and later at Marcotte's Market. Roger was an active member for years with the Newmarket Legion. Both Roger and his wife Barbara were avid golfers and bowlers who played on several town leagues, and until recently they were active members of the community involved in school and youth projects. Currently, Roger is a resident of the Rockingham County Nursing Home in Brentwood, New Hampshire. And we thank Mr. Munroe for his exemplary service and also for sharing his experiences with us today.